Hello everyone, welcome back to another aquatic adventure. I'm Erin here with Wave Foundation at Newport Aquarium, very clearly in our Surrounded by Sharks tunnel. And today we are in our Surrounded by Sharks tunnel because we are going to talk about something so important to all fish that live in the water, because we are talking about scales today. And so I'm not talking scales that weigh things, I'm talking scales that cover the body of fish. There are many other kinds of animals that have scales on their body. Today we are going to focus just on fish scales though. Now, let's first start with why are scales important. Scales cover the entire body of fish, and they're important for multiple reasons. The first reason we'll talk about is protection. Scales are harder than our skin, and so you can think maybe like your fingernail. So those scales afford them a lot of protection. If a fish were to run into a rock or honestly run into each other, those scales are going to be strong enough to keep the fish safe. So one scale might flake off, or it might honestly not be affected by a rock because that scale is so much stronger than our skin. Like I said, think about your fingernail. So their protection, they also are very important for the ability of fish to swim, and actually the improved ability for them to swim. So their scales are something that we call hydrodynamic. You guys may have heard of aerodynamic, and we think of that as us land dwellers because it's important that we're able to move through air. And so an airplane is made to be very dynamic and move through air efficiently. Fish don't need to worry about moving through air, right? They live in water, but they need to think about how well they move through that water. So they have to think about being hydrodynamic. Their scales help them to do that. Their scales help them to be more sleek, helps to keep their body in a certain shape, and so that helps them to move through the water a lot faster and more efficiently. So today we're going to talk about two different shapes of scales. There are a few others, but we're going to talk about the two most common and the one that's found on sharks. So we're going to start with general fish scales, and that is called cycloid. So I have a picture here of what those scales look like, and you can see it's called cycloid because it's very rounded. And this picture is showing you that it's common on salmon, but also we could see that in our snapper, our sturgeon fish, this very rounded scale shape. And you see that on their body, they overlap like roof tiles. And that helps to keep the fish protected in another way, that there's very little space for sand or rocks or pebbles to get in between the scales because they're all overlapping. So I actually have one of these scales to show you. This is a very large scale from a fish, and this is a cycloid scale. So you can see it's really smooth on the top and it's very rounded. And so this is an example of a cycloid scale. Now, these are not scales that we see on sharks. Shark scales are very different. So first off, I want to say, if you have ever been to the aquarium or been to other places where you were able to touch a shark, you may have felt that it's really smooth in one direction, but it kind of feels like sandpaper in the other. Now, it's smooth if you were going from head to tail, and that's how we should usually touch sharks if we're going to touch them. But if you by chance got to feel from tail to head just a little bit even, it probably felt like sandpaper. And that is because of the shape of their scales. We call their scale shape, scale shape placoid, and that is because it has these three raised grooves. Now you'll see that there is one really raised spine in the middle, and then there are two more slightly raised on the edges. And what this shape does, these spines allow for almost small little vortexes of water to form at the end of the scales, and that helps them to move even faster and more efficiently in the water. So their scale shape is built for them to be predators, and especially ambush predators, to move in quick bursts as fast as they can to get their food. And this spine is what you were feeling if you were feeling that sandpapery texture on shark skin. And they also have them all laid out like a roof tile to help keep things from getting under those scales. So fish all have scales. Like I said, there are a few other shapes of fish scales, but these are two really common ones and that we see here on animals in our Surrounded by Sharks exhibit. But in general, scales are so important to fish to keep them protected and to keep them moving efficiently through the water. as you all see, our sharks are able to move really well behind me here. That's one of our sand tiger sharks. So I hope you guys have a great day. Take a moment to look really small and really close in at some of our animals. And I hope you guys have a great day.